Hello everybody and welcome back to Unlocking Unreal Engine. Today we're going to be playing WoW Classic Hardcore. Last time we updated our lighting system to only interact if we're near it and then to stop interacting if we're no longer near it. However, we have a fundamental flaw with this current system. Let's go to the first person map, and what I'm going to do is first teach you a shortcut. With this selected and I press W to make sure it's on the move tool, if I hold in Alt and I drag in a direction, it's going to duplicate the object. You can see every time I do this, it's creating another instance of our BP light system. However, the flaw that I'm wanting to show you is that we can't control which light turns on and which light turns off. I'm realizing I should separate these a little bit so it's a bit more clear. There. Now you'll be able to clearly see the lights a little bit different here. If I get just close enough, we should be able to, turn one light on. But if I get too close, now we're controlling both. And if we get even closer, now we're doing all three. You can see where this is going to cause an issue if you're making a game where there's a light switch next to an item you need to pick up, and then maybe there's an enemy there. Who knows what kind of dynamics your game is going to have. There's a huge limitation to the current setup that we have. So to fix this issue, we're actually going to create a new blueprint. We're going to start from the ground up and create a new system that will allow us to better dictate which object is being interacted with. So I went ahead and deleted our three light systems here. I'm going to head back over and grab my directional light. Remember, if you can't find it, it should be in the hierarchy over here, and you can just press the F button and it'll bring you straight to it. I'm going to take the intensity and we're going to bring this back to 1 so it looks a little bit closer to the original brightness that we had. And I'm going to open my content drawer with Control Space. We're going to head over to Brand and BPs, or whatever yours is called. We're going to select an actor, and we are not going to use the light system anymore. So we're going to right click. We're going to create Blueprint class. We're going to pick an actor. Remember, it's called an actor because it is going to need a transform. It needs to exist within 3D space, and that's what makes it an actor. Have I explained that yet? If I haven't, that's what actor means. It means it needs to have a transform, a position in 3D space. Anyway, we're going to make an actor, and I'm going to call this BP door system. Now, you're going to be surprised. Doors seem very simple, but they're one of the most complex things that you could ever tackle because of the infinite depth that they can have, which, for a learning perspective, is a really good thing. We're going to keep adapting this thing until it's the best door we've ever seen. With it created, let's go ahead and open up that blueprint. You'll see I still have the light system open. I'm going to go ahead and just close this by hitting the X. And the first thing I want to do is I want to get a visual representation of the door on screen so we can manipulate its details. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is have door system selected, and I'm going to click Add. And I'm going to add a static mesh. And I'm going to call this SM for static mesh _ door frame. In case I haven't explained it yet, a static mesh, it's better if I show you. So when we're talking about meshes, we're talking about how the 3D software essentially visualizes an object. You see the grid pattern on all these? Let's open up this rabbit one to be a bit bigger. All these lines represent essentially folds in the mesh. Whenever you hear about polygons, like, oh, that doesn't have enough polygons, or it has too many polygons, this is actually what we're talking about, is the mesh. So if you see here, this one has a ton more polygons than the one on the right. See how much more smooth it is? Whereas the one on the right is a little bit more ragged, but has way less polygons. So when we talk about a static mesh, we're not talking about a mesh that can't move in 3D space, because, for example, these boxes are static meshes, but they can move. When we say static mesh, we're talking about the mesh specifically. This mesh will never deform. It holds the way it looks permanently. Unlike if we had a mesh of my arm, for example, whenever I bend it, there are certain areas of the mesh that would need to deform in order for me to be able to do this. That would be something like a skeletal mesh, but we're not going to get into skeletal meshes right now. Just understand that a static mesh is a mesh that does not deform. So back in the door, we've added a static mesh for the door frame. And then what we're going to do is we're going to keep door frame selected. And I'll explain why in a moment. But for now, we're going to go ahead and hit add again. We're going to add another static mesh. And this will be SM door. Now, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. If yours looks like this, your hierarchy, then you also need to do what I'm about to do. Click on this door SM and drag it on top of the SM door frame so it looks like this. This is what we call a parent-to-child relationship. I don't want to get too involved into what it means right now. Just understand that the position of the door frame is now going to influence the position of the door. So if we move the door frame, the door will follow. Now we're going to go ahead and click on that door frame, make sure it's selected. And over here on the right-hand side in its details, you'll see we have an area called static mesh. I'm going to click this down arrow and it lets me search. So I'm going to type in door frame, and you can be one word or two. And you'll see that Unreal Engine has a default door frame for us to use. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And then I'm going to make my viewport, make it see it a little bit better. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on SM door, and on the right hand side in the details panel, we're going to go to static mesh again. And now I'm going to type in door and click. And now you'll notice that the door is 1 in the wrong position, and 2, I want to show you what I meant by parent to child for just a moment. This is not the full definition, but it's why we're doing it for now. If we click on the door frame and we hit W to make sure we're moving the door frame, if I move the door frame, notice the door follows, and then I'll hit Control Z to move that back to the origin. Now, Control Z is not a button to send something to the origin. Control Z is back. So I hit back to move it back to the origin. With both of those in our scene, I'm going to hit compile and save. Now we're going to do something really simple. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the door, and we're going to move it to position. So in order to do that, I'm going to click and move closer. And you'll notice that all of a sudden my camera is moving a lot slower, and you're probably like, how is he getting that precision? When you have your right click down on the viewport, so I've right clicked the viewport, if you scroll back, it'll slow the camera down and you can get really slow, or you can scroll up and you'll go faster. So I'm going to get into a position so we can see right where the door needs to be. And with it selected, I am going to hit W to make sure we're moving. And I'm going to grab the green arrow here and slowly move it until it's in position. But uh-oh. That's not in position. It's slightly in the door frame, and we've got some space here. And if I try to move it back, uh-oh, again, we have some space here. So what we need to do is we need to change the snapping that it's currently on. If you look up here, there's this grid. This is it snapping to the grid, and it's set to 10. So it's snapping to every 10 units. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click it, and I'm going to change it to 5. Let's see if 5 does what we need it to do. Move it over 1, boop, and look at that. Now we are perfectly in position. So what I'll do is I'll hit Control-Shift-S, and then I will compile. And what's cool about static meshes and visual blueprints is if I go back to the world, I can already start dragging that into the world, and look, now we have a door in our world, which is amazing. And obviously, you wouldn't know this by default, but I'm going to show you a flaw that comes with the original door. And I'm pretty sure they do this on purpose for learning purposes. I'm going to hit play. If I go up to our door, watch what happens. Well, first off, we can't fit. That is actually going to make this example a little bit harder to show you. So let's make it so we can actually fit. And how we're going to do that is I'm going to hit Control Space. We're going to go to our content. We're going to go to first person. And we're going to go to blueprints. And here's our first person character. So I'm going to open that up. We'll go to the viewport. And you'll see that our character is rather big, or rather the hitbox for our character is rather big. So what I'm going to do is I am going to click on that capsule component. And on the right hand side, you'll see we have a half height and a radius. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take its radius down to like 30. and that'll make us a lot smaller from a width perspective. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit compile and save, and now we should be able to fit through the door. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit play. Now watch what happens as I attempt to go through the door. The door does not have collision. That's an issue. So let's figure out how to add collision to a static mesh. And don't worry, it's actually quite simple whenever the geometry is as simple as the door. Let's go back to our door BP. Let's make sure our door here is selected. And on the right-hand side, where we have the static mesh currently selected as SM door, if we hit this little folder here with the magnifying glass, boop, it'll take our content drawer directly to the thing we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on SM door. And you'll see that we get this little preview of our static mesh in a very, very brightly lit area. At the top of the screen, you'll see that we have a collision panel. If I open this up, you'll notice, this is how I note, by the way, if something is either wrong with the collision or there's no collision at all, because I can't remove collision. So there's no collision at all. But because it's a very simple mesh like a door, all we need to do is hit add box simplified collision and watch. Boop. Now we have a green box that indicates the collision of the door. Currently, you'll notice that it goes past the door, and that's because it's trying to include the door handle. Now, honestly, you can leave it like this. Unless you want specifically the door handle to be interacted with, this is a perfectly fine way to do it. However, if this isn't what you want because you want to take the extra step and make the door handle have its own collision, which, by the way, I do not recommend, especially for a beginner. But if you wanted to make this smaller, what you could do is on the right-hand side, where our details are, if we keep scrolling, eventually you'll see that we have a collision section. Within the collision section, we have primitives. And if you open the primitives, you'll notice that we have a bunch of zeros, but our boxes, the one we added, is currently in that array. So if we open that up and then open up index 0, here is all the information for this box collision. It's this X then, it's the 18. Let's bring this to like 10. Still a little big, go 5. And there you go. Notice that 5 actually fits that thing perfectly. So if you're concerned about really precise collision, this is how you would do it. And we'll hit save. With this being saved, now I can actually, I'm going to close the static mesh here. I'm going to close the first person character, and I'm going to go back to the first person map. And now you'll notice because we added the collision, we can no longer just phase through the door. Now don't panic. I do remember this is a beginner's tutorial, and I know that we just went through a fair bit of information. So let's briefly recap. We had an issue with our light system where if you overlapped 1, 2, or 3, it would start interacting with all of them, meaning we would never have precision whenever we're interacting with something. So I had us build a door blueprint, and all we did was we added a door frame and a door. I briefly explained what a static mesh was, and then we moved the door into position, and we had to change our grid snapping to 5 in order to make that happen. The door didn't have collision, so we selected our SM door, looked in its details, and pressed the folder with a magnifying glass to find it in the content drawer. We opened the static mesh, we went into collision, and at the time, this was not something we could click. It looked like this, meaning there was no collision. So we simply clicked on collision and added a simplified box. And at the time, we made it just a little bit smaller to fit the door. But I'm going to leave it like this now, and I'm going to hit save. Let's continue. So doors are really fun because there's a lot of things that you can make out of custom events that end up making them a staple for learning how to manipulate other blueprints whenever you go to create them. Let's go into our event graph. For now, I'm going to take all 3 of the default events and delete them. And let's create a really simple custom event. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to type in custom event. In case I haven't explained what a custom event is yet, it's essentially something that you can call and it acts as an event to run some code. You'll see what I mean in a moment. For now, let's go ahead and name our custom event open door. Now, what is it we want to have happen whenever the door opens? Obviously, we want the door to open, but what does that entail? It entails the rotation of the door static mesh. If we go to the viewport and I select the door and I press E so I get the rotation tool, and I grab this blue one here and I start moving it, you'll notice that rotating it essentially opens and closes the door. So in the event graph, what we can do is we can get a reference to the door by dragging it onto the event graph, and we want to edit its details, right? So I'm going to pull out of the door and I'm going to set the relative location. Now, there's a word there I just used and we haven't discussed it yet. Relative. What is a relative location? Well, when you're working in a 3D space, there's technically two rotations going on at the same time. Let's head to the map to kind of explain what's going on here. If I click on my door and I press E for the rotation tool and I start spinning it, on the details on the right, you'll see that its transform is updating. The rotation just spins with the door. Makes sense, right? This is actually known as its global rotation because that rotation is based off of its position in the global greater 3D space. However, if I select specifically the door, and I can do that by going to its details and selecting specifically the door component, you'll notice that I can spin specifically the door and not the whole thing. And notice what its rotation is right now. -479. But if I click on the BP as a whole again, so I just click on the whole BP again, and I can do that by going to the top here and clicking on the top of the hierarchy, so the BP itself, its rotation is still 0. That's because the BP as a whole uses a global rotation based off of this giant 3D space. Its components, however, like the door, uses a separate rotation that's purely based off of this door, that's purely based off of the BP. This is because, think about how complicated it would be if you wanted a door to open up, but you had to do the math to know the exact rotation it needs to open to, depending on its current location in 3D space. That would suck. So instead, all we do is we separate them. We say there's a relative location, and then we say that there is a global location. However, I'm realizing I picked location. That's not the one we want. We want set relative rotation, not location. So whenever we call open door, we are going to set the relative rotation to, I don't remember. So let's go to the viewport and see. I'm going to go ahead and click on my door. I'm going to press E to make sure we have the rotation tool, and I'm going to open the door. It looks like -90. If yours ever does this, by the way, -89.99 repeating, you can literally just grab this and put -90. That's the same thing. I'm not sure why that bug exists, but it does. But regardless, -90. However, for now, I'm going to set that back to 0. We'll go to the event graph, and when we open the door, we want Z to be -90. And we'll hit compile and save. If you're wondering why I knew it was Z, by the way, it's because in the viewport, I did this without thinking about it. If I click the door and I open this up, this far right number, the blue one, this is Z. This is X, Y, Z. So I knew that this was going to be Z, and that's why here I set Z to -90. Okay, cool. But how do you call a custom event, right? Like, you understand that if you overlap a box, you could call an event, but this is just a custom event. What's it tied to? Well, right now it's not tied to jack. So let's implement our old system for the time being so you guys can see open door in action. So to implement the old system, I'm going to click the highest level of our component hierarchy, and I'm going to click add. And this time we're going to go ahead and just get that box collision. Box is fine. I'm going to go to viewport, and we're just going to go ahead and set this to like 200, 200, and we'll set this to like 100. And then you'll notice that it goes into the ground. So because this is 100, we need to take its location up 50 on the Y. So you take it up half. So we'll go ahead and take this up 100, and there we go. So we'll hit compile and save. We'll go to the event graph. We'll grab that box. Actually, we're not going to grab the box. We're going to right click the box, and we're going to add an event on component begin overlap. And you've done this before. So we're going to take out the other actor. We're going to do an equal. We're going to right click. We're going to say get player character. So there we go. If the other actor overlapping us is the player character, we'll hit B and click for our branch. Plug that in, plug the execution pin in, right click the branch. Is it the player? By the way, I'm not going to go super fast. I know I'm moving kind of fast, especially if you're new, but as we progress, I will slowly start getting a little bit faster. So just hang in there. Don't worry. I'll make sure you don't fall behind, but something has overlapped us. Is it the player? If it is, now we can actually call a custom event. So open door. So there we go. Now, whenever we overlap that box, we'll call open door. Let's see what it does. I'm gonna hit compile and save and take a look and see what it does. So there's the door. Boop. Oh no, did you see how it did that instantly? That's not what we want. That thing just fucking popped open. Huh. Dark Slayer told me that they're set and get. We can get the relative rotation or we can set the relative location. So how do I make it smooth? Do I have to know about animation? Luckily, no. There is other things besides get and set. However, until you need them, it's hard to let you know about them. And this is something you're going to find out a lot when it comes to game development. A lot of the times, you're not going to know about the thing you need until you need it. And then you've got to do the research. In this case, what we need is, I should have kept my reference to the door. What we need is something called move component to. So here is our door, which is a component. We're going to pull it out. We're going to do move component, and then you'll see move component to. And voila. It's a very big box, so we need to move some stuff around here to make it look a little bit better. So when we overlap or call open door, we're going to start moving the component of SM door, and we need its target relative rotation, remember, to be 90. We can have it ease in or ease out. So what that means is if my hand is the animation and there's no ease in and out, it'll just go the same speed all the way through. Ease in means it's building speed, so. And ease out means it slows down, so. However, if you have both, it's ease in, ease out. So since we're opening the door, I say we ease out, but not in, because you usually just kind of grab and let it go, right? And then we have overtime. So how long do we want it to take? Let's just say 1 second for now. We'll hit compile and save. So let's take a look. We overlap. It's us, run open door. Open door is move component, specifically the door, to 90 degrees on the Z, and we're going to ease in over 1 second. Let's go take a look. We'll hit play. And we'll approach. And uh-oh. Now it's in the center. Let's take a look and see what happened. So if you look, we're setting the target relative rotation to 90 on the Z, but we're also setting the targeted relative location. So because we don't want it to move, we only want it to rotate, we need to look at the door's current position in the spot that we want it to be in. So its current position is 0, 45, 0. So let's take it 0, 45, 0. That will keep it from centering. Let's hit compile and save and try it again. All right. And there you go. It looks like it jumps a little bit. Am I crazy? Are you jumping slightly? Hold on. No, it's just really fast. And the reason it's fast is because we aren't easing in. So let's make it ease in as well and maybe make this take 2 seconds instead. So now you'll be able to see it actually ease in and out of the animation. It'll take slightly longer. There you go. All right, but this still doesn't solve the issue that we set out to solve because it's still got this giant collision on it. Now, what we're about to do is extremely complicated for a new user. I'm taking a little bit of a gamble by showing you this. However, I'm going to do my best to explain it as best I can. This is where you come in. If I'm failing to explain it, I need to know. If you don't understand or you have a specific question, please leave it in the comments section below. It's the only way I'm going to be able to improve this. That being said, Tier 3 patrons also get full access to my Discord DMs and can message me at any point. We're going to hit Control Space. We're going to go to Content. We're going to go to your BPs folder. We're going to create a new folder. I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this Interfaces, okay? Within Interfaces, we're going to right click. We're going to go to Blueprint, but we're not going to click Blueprint Class. We're going to click Blueprint Interface. We're going to call this BPI for Blueprint Interface _ interaction. Control Shift S to save all. What is a blueprint interface? Remember how blueprints aren't just sitting around waiting for your input? They have to be told to listen for it, and then they're waiting for your input. Well, there's another way we can go about it to send them a message to do something that's not directly our input. It's called a blueprint interface. Think of an interface as an envelope with a message on the inside. When the blueprint receives the message, it can respond however it wants. And I'm specifying however it wants because each blueprint can respond to the same message in a unique way. For example, if you interacted with a light switch, you would want the switch to go up or down. But if you interacted with a door, you would want the door to rotate, open, and close. So if you're going to create an interaction system, each of the interactable objects have to respond in their own unique way. And you do that by sending it an interface message. Right now, the concept alone might seem a little complicated, but just stick with me. Let's go ahead and add a message to the interface that we can send to blueprints. I'm going to open up the BPI interaction. This new function here, I just want you to think of this as the message in the envelope. So we want the message to be, hey, we're trying to interact with you, okay? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on new function over here on the right, and I'm going to change the name of it by hitting F2 on my keyboard. I'm going to erase new function, and I'm going to type in interaction, because that's like the overall theme of what we're doing, _ request. The reason I name it request is because certain objects might require a key, certain objects might have a broken light attached to them. This is nothing more than a, hey, I'm trying to interact with you. And we're going to hit compile and save. And for now, that's it. You can close the interface. You've put the message that you want into the envelope, okay? So now we need a way to send it to the blueprint that we want to interact with. To keep this episode from being an hour long, we're going to use one of the primitive systems that we've already been using. For now, grab this code here. This is inside the door system. This is the overlap that opens the door, and hit delete. You may keep open door right here, and that's it. Compile and save. For now, I'm not worried about anything else. We're going to hit Control Space. We're going to go to Content, first person character, okay? So you know what this is. We've been in this a couple times. If we get a viewport, remember, there's our collision. This is just our little pawn that we've got moving around. Instead of the object reacting to our presence, we're going to reverse it for the time being. We're going to change it though, trust me. But for now, we're learning a new concept, so accept the flaws. I'm going to click on the capsule component in particular, and I'm going to click add. And we want a box collision. Okay, this isn't new. We've done this 100 times. I'm going to set this to like 200, 200, 200. Okay, so we get a nice big area around us. I'm going to hit compile and save. Then in the event graph, again, you've done this before. We're going to right click that box. We're going to add an event. We're going to do on component begin overlap. This time, we can't check if it's us because we're the ones that have the collision. So this time we're going to look for something else. On other actor, if we pull out, there's something called does implement interface. And we're going to click that. So remember what we just created? We created an interface. So this is going to check if the thing we just overlapped has that interface. Okay. So what we're going to do is for the interface, I'm going to type in BPI interaction. We need a branch, so I'm going to hold B and click. I'm going to plug the execution pin in. I'm going to plug the Boolean result in. Going to right click the branch. Is the object interactable? Like that. And if it is, we're going to send it a message. So I'm going to pull out of true. And do you remember what we called it? We called it an interaction underscore request. I'm going to type in interaction and notice we have interaction request message. So I'm going to click that. And you'll notice that it even has an envelope. So the interaction request is the function on the inside that I told you is the thing we're putting in the envelope. However, you'll notice it does need a target. So what are we sending it to? Well, we're sending it to this other actor. So you'll see when our box overlaps something, it's going to say, does it implement the BPI interaction? If it does, send it a message that we're trying to interact with it. So let's hit compile and save. I'm hoping, is everyone on board? I need comments on this one, okay? We're doing some complicated stuff. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the door system, okay? So we're back at the door viewport. See, we're in the door, okay? In fact, just for fun, by the way, I'm going to even delete the box collision so you know the box collision is not doing anything. But we're going to go to the event graph. And this is the only code that's in the event graph. Like, I can zoom out. Yours will look the same. All we have is this custom event to open a door. We're going to go up here to the class settings. On the right-hand side, you'll see that we have implemented interfaces. I can click add BPI, and there's BPI interaction. Compile and save. So now think about it. We know that this is going to pass. This is going to say true because it's going to overlap the door. It's going to be like, oh, look, it implements BPI interaction, true, and it's going to receive the message of interact request, okay? So the door system currently has no definition of what to do when it receives the message. It'll receive it, but it doesn't have a definition. On the left-hand side, however, you'll see that under interfaces, one of the things it can respond to is interaction request. If I double click this, you'll note that we have a red box here, an event. We can run some code. So when we receive the message of interaction request, the door specifically is going to run open door. Now notice if this was a light, we could run turn on light, or we could run blow up bomb, but this is a door. So we're going to run open door. Compile, save. Now, let's hit play. It might immediately open. Okay, it didn't. All right. So whenever I get close enough and my box collision overlaps, it's going to say, ooh, does this implement the interface? It does. We need to send it a message. And then the door will go, what's this? Oh, an interaction request? I have a definition for that. Let me do that. Are you ready? So I hope you're starting to see the power of blueprint interfaces. They can send messages to other blueprints, and the blueprints can do whatever they want with that message, which is why they're so powerful. What you're seeing is modular design. Today's homework, besides letting me know if you're lost, is can you figure out a first person line trace by channel? If you can't, I don't want you to panic. Line trace by channel when you're new is not easy, okay? That's what in the next episode is going to be about. Line trace by channel. So you can get a head start by trying to take a look at it. But if you're enjoying the series, please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, this channel only exists because of the Patreon patrons. So please consider getting in there and helping me out. Not to mention, you get access to some pretty cool benefits. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.